Hello, my dear sleepy listener. You're here, and the world is quiet now. Just you, your breath, and the gentle rustle of time as it turns its pages slowly beside you. Tonight, we drift far from crowded city and glowing screens. We journey instead to a highland kingdom kissed by ocean winds and golden incense trails. Aksum, a name once spoken by Roman merchants, Egyptian priests, and Indian sailors alike. A place of silence now, but not forgotten. Before you drift away into peaceful slumber, please take a moment to like this video, leave a gentle comment about your favorite historical moment, and subscribe to keep these soothing tales coming your way. If you're listening from a cozy bed in Tokyo or nestled on a couch in Sao Paulo, let me know where in the world and what time of night you're drifting from. Now, dim the lights, settle in, and let these gentle whispers of history lull you into sleep. You awaken beside a harbour, but not one crowded with shipping containers or blaring horns. No, this is Adulis Aksum's gleaming port on the Red Sea, around the year 100 AD. The tide is low, revealing cracked stone quays and rows of ceramic amphorae stacked in careful rows. The sun is still stretching its arms over the horizon, casting a thin gold ribbon across the water. Seabirds call softly as if greeting the day in gears. The air smells of cinnamon bark, frankincense, and something faintly metallic iron, perhaps being loaded onto a waiting vessel. These ships are not the grand galleys of Rome, but dhows lean, curved boats with stitched sails, catching the wind like palms reaching skyward. Their hulls are packed with goods that whisper of empires, the tusks of forest elephants, the pelts of lions, carved obsidian bowls, and brilliant blue glass beads. You watch as traders from Egypt and Nabatea haggle not with shouts but with subtle gestures, the dance of fingers over scales and bolts of cloth. Behind them, a priest murmurs a morning chant beside a squat stone altar. You can almost hear it vibrate through the dusty air, not quite Christian, not quite pagan, just Aksumite. Even here, on the sea's edge, there is a stillness. It's as if the kingdom breathes slowly, confidently, without needing to announce itself. This is not a civilization that flares brightly only to burn out. This is a slow ember, patient and enduring, quietly smelting gold in mountain forges and mapping stars with shepherd's eyes. One trader passes you, smiling. His robes dyed a deep indigo that marks him as elite. Tucked in his hand is a thin copper coin. On one side's a rough lion. On the other, an inscription no one in the West has yet learned to read. But here, it speaks volumes. Aksum isn't simply a local kingdom. Even now, its fingers stretch down into Sudan, up into Arabia, and eastward to the coasts of India. Roman merchants will soon write about it with the same breathless admiration they use for Parthia or Kushan lands. One Greek sailor will call it one of the 4 great powers of the world. But for now, it is just morning, and the wind off the water feels clean and kind. You wander past a group of children playing with carved bone toys, tiny antelopes, little wheels, and wonder, idly, what their names will one day be. King's priests, forgotten stonemasons. Yet even now, gentle debates hum through the scholarly world. Was Adulis already under Aksumite control at this time? Or was it still a kind of shared hub independent, flexible, just beginning to fall under the orbit of inland kings? No one can say with certainty. The sands cover as much as they reveal. Still, the kingdom rises inland, and you can feel it calling you there. But not yet. You sit for a while by the water, feeling the sun on your skin and the salt crust on the air, listening to the soft scrape of rope against wood and the hush of waves like a grandmother's lullaby. Time doesn't press you forward here. In Aksum, it folds softly over itself, like linen in a cedar chest. You close your eyes. The ships begin to slip into the sea, their sails blossoming like quiet promises. You stir from sleep just as the light shifts, not from sun or firelight, but from the golden gleam of polished stone catching the early rays. You're no longer at the coast. Now, you stand within the ancient city of Aksum itself, high in the Ethiopian highlands. The air is cooler here, kissed by the mist of morning dew and the scent of damp earth. It's quiet, reverently so. Birds flit between tall trees, and a distant bell echoes from a stone chapel, though the sound is not quite Christian, at least. Not yet. Before you rises something almost dreamlike, an obelisk, impossibly tall, cut from a single slab of granite. You tilt your head back to follow it upward, and upward still. This is no mere decoration. It is a Stelaean ancient monument meant to mark a tomb, or perhaps a throne, or something even more sacred. Its face is carved with intricate geometric designs, tiny false doors, windows, and little lock-like patterns, as if it were meant to represent a building, or perhaps a life. You are not alone. Priests in white linen robes move slowly across the open courtyard, their feet whispering against stone. One stops, nods to you, and points gently toward the larger stelae, now broken and fallen, as though sleep or time itself tipped it over. That stelae, nearly 33 meters long, once stood taller than anything else on the continent, taller than many towers in Rome. It would have glinted with bronze or iron caps that caught sunlight and sent it dancing across the mountainside. You run your fingers along the base of one monument. The stone is cold, yet smooth, as if it has been touched by generations of pilgrims or mourners. There's a quiet vibration to it. It's hard not to feel reverence, though no one asks you to bow or speak. The stelae stand in lines like frozen giants, some tilted, some cracked, but all noble in their stillness, and yet no writing marks them, no names, no boasts. Historians still puzzle over what, exactly, they signify. Were they simply grave markers for nobility, cosmic signposts, or spiritual ladders to the heavens, even today? Archaeologists gently brush away the dirt, hoping for answers that remain coy, like secrets carried away by wind. But in this moment, you feel no confusion, only awe. You wander past smaller stelae, each one a variation on the same mysterious theme. One is said to belong to a noble woman who ruled a great household. Another perhaps marks the resting place of a high priest. Yet all have one trait in common, their scale. Even in death, these monuments whispered of order, control, and cosmic ambition. A group of children with small clay tablets walks past. One of them pauses, waves a hand toward a half-buried base, and says something you can't quite understand. A teacher nods. It might be a lesson in lineage, or stone cutting, or both. You wonder if these young ones know that their people's work will one day be carried off across oceans, carted to Rome, then returned centuries later by apologetic diplomats and cranes. That's another story, of course. But for now, the stones are at rest. There's a peculiar human charm to this place, too. Behind one monument, a goat has somehow climbed a set of exposed stones and surveys the courtyard like a bored sentry. A monk shoos it away without a word, and the goat wanders off, unbothered, nibbling on tufts of highland grass. You pause at a nearby pool, its surface still and clear. Some believe this was once part of a ritual site, used to reflect the stars or the stelae themselves. Others think it may have simply collected mountain runoff, a practical basin made sacred by habit. You peer into the water and catch your own reflection, layered with sky, and all around you stone, cut with ancient care, not rushed or mass-produced. This is a world where things were made to last not decades, but centuries, perhaps millennia. A wind stirs through the field, carrying with it the scent of rosemary and old rain. You close your eyes and let it pass through you. There are places in history that do not shout. They do not demand. They endure, patiently, until someone remembers to listen. You are listening now. You rise again, this time seated beneath a shaded awning in the heart of Aksum's bustling inner market. But it's not spices or fabric that hold your attention today. Instead, it's something far smaller, small enough to fit between your thumb and forefinger, yet mighty enough to shape the kingdom's image across seas and centuries. You hold a gold coin, bright and smooth despite the weight of time. One side bears the profile of a man with a tight crown and firm gaze, King Adulis. His face is calm, distant, confident. Around him, a ring of Greek letters proclaims his rule, not in the native tongue of Ge'ez, but in the language of commerce and empire, a calculated choice. You turn the coin over. A slender disc cross rests at its center, flanked by barley stalks and tiny markings indicating weight and purity. This is not a ceremonial trinket. This coin was struck to be used to travel, to pass from palm to palm, from camelback merchant to sailor's purse to Roman tax ledgers. Adulis was the first Aksumite king to mint coins in his own name around the early 270s AD, and this small act changed everything. No longer would Aksumite wealth be measured only in tusks and textiles. From this moment on, the kingdom spoke in the language of currency: gold for prestige, silver for middle trade, copper for the daily grind of commerce. Around you, other coins pass between buyers and sellers. Some are freshly minted, the metal still crisp and bright. Others are worn, the faces faded, but still recognized. A vendor explains, with some amusement, that even Roman traders trust Aksumite coinage more than their own at times, especially when local emperors debase the denarius. Trust is a strange thing, isn't it? It can shine brighter than gold when well earned. The decision to stamp coins with Greek inscriptions sparks a thought. Why not Ge'ez? The native script scholars still wonder. Was it purely for trade appeal, or did it reflect Aksum's view of itself as part of a wider Mediterranean dialogue? No one is quite certain. Some argue there may have been coins in local script that simply didn't survive or weren't made to travel. Others believe it was a deliberate message: Aksum speaks your language. World, do business with us. Coins bearing crosses, crescent moons, and even ears of wheat pass through your fingers. You notice the subtle evolution from older solar symbols to Christian motifs over the decades, like fingerprints of changing faith. And this marketplace, it hums like a hive, but it's orderly, measured. Frankincense bundled in palm fronds, glassware from Alexandria, peppercorns from India, and small ivory carvings shaped like lions, all traded here under the watchful gaze of scribes who tally values with ink and bone styluses. You sit near a scribe who's copying ledgers onto thin parchment. He pauses to sip a spiced brew, offers you a cup. The taste is earthy, a bit sour. perhaps early coffee, though no one yet calls it that. He smiles as he points out a record of goods sent to the Himyarite kingdom across the sea-gold thread, carved wood, and a chest of coins sealed with the king's signet. Nearby, a boy tries to pass off a lead coin he's painted gold. The merchant catches the trick, chuckles, and tousles the boy's hair instead of scolding him. A light moment in a heavy place. And yet, as you sip your brew and feel the coin's weight in your palm, you can't help but sense the ambition behind its creation. Aksum was not merely content to be rich, it wanted to be known. A coin is, after all, a message that never sleeps. Even in pockets, it speaks, and even when buried, it remembers. The afternoon light shifts, catching the edges of the coin just so. It flashes once, golden and proud. A merchant leans in and tells you a curious tale. Some say the king's coinage was modelled not only after Roman types, but included hidden symbols understood only by priests, an ear of barley here, a slant of sun there, meant to invoke the divine order of trade. Others insist it was simply practical artistry. Perhaps the truth is both. The market quiets slightly as the sun dips low behind the hills, casting a honey-coloured glow on walls carved with geometric reliefs. You place the coin back into a velvet pouch, tying it shut with a thread that feels stronger than silk. You rise, leaving the coin behind for now, but the coin does not forget you. You find yourself riding alongside a caravan as it crests a hill overlooking the eastern plains. Dust clings gently to the hem of your robe, stirred by the soft hooves of mules and the rhythmic creak of wooden carts. But ahead of you, plodding with slow, deliberate grace, walk the true stars of this journey, elephants. Not just any elephants. These are the prized war and ceremonial elephants of Aksum, their ears flapping gently in the highland breeze, their skin dusted with crushed herbs said to ward off flies and bad luck alike. You've never travelled in such company before. The sound of their footsteps is like a heartbeat you can feel through the earth. You're en route to a diplomatic meeting, yes. Truly, Aksum is sending gifts to its trading partners across the Red Sea, in Himyar. Ambassadors ride alongside you, dressed in robes of crimson and gold thread, their fingers heavy with rings. At least one of them carries a carved tablet wrapped in goatskin, a message, it seems, for a rival king, or a friend, or both. You glance skyward. The monsoon winds have begun to shift, as they always do in this season, and the sailors at Adulis are watching the skies carefully. This window brief and fickle will allow the ships to cross into Arabia and return before the waters turn dangerous again. Timing is everything in this kingdom of calculated motion. Beside you, a young elephant handler hums a tune you don't recognize. He tells you his elephant is named Afra, which means storm, a fitting name, though the animal seems more contemplative than chaotic. You wonder how long it's taken this young man to train such a creature. He shrugs and says he began when he was about the size of the elephant's ear, a measurement that feels oddly precise. The elephants are not alone in their burden. Slung across their backs are bundles of precious items, iron tools, fine cotton dyed with indigo, and bolts of linen scented with frankincense. You glimpse one parcel tied carefully with woven reeds and sealed in wax. It holds carved ivory combs meant for a queen's dowry, and tucked among it all, in a wooden box shaped like a lion, is something less obvious, a set of Aksumite coins, stamped with the cross of King Azana. These, you're told, are meant as diplomatic proof, not just of wealth, but of faith. The message is subtle but clear. Aksum trades not only in goods, but in ideas. The elephants are quiet as they march, but one occasionally trumpets lowly, startling a bird from a nearby acacia tree. The landscape changes as you descend hills giving way to scrubby plains, the green giving way to sand and red earth. You're approaching the coast now, and the faint scent of salt dances in the air. There's a legend the ambassador shares as you camp for the evening. He says that once, an Aksumite elephant named Dawit refused to board a ship bound for Arabia. No matter how many handlers tried, the beast refused to step aboard, kneeling in the sand and trumpeting until the voyage was cancelled. That very night, a storm destroyed half the fleet. The elephant, it seems, had better sense than the priests. Whether it's true or not, you smile. As the stars emerge above your head, the caravan rests. Fires crackle gently. You sip a warm brew of steeped herbs and roasted barley, offered by one of the cooks. The elephants sleep too, their trunks curled, their massive bodies rising and falling like peaceful hills. But even in this moment of calm, there is an undercurrent of power. Aksum does not send its animals lightly. To present an elephant is to present control of land, trade, and time itself. Few kingdoms can match such a statement. Still, some historians today gently question the scale of these exchanges. Were elephants really used so often in diplomacy, or have later writers romanticized their role? Were they symbolic or standard? There's little consensus. Inscriptions are few. Coins speak louder, but you, here under the stars, know what you saw, and it is not easily forgotten. You awaken to the quiet hush of incense trailing through the rafters of a stone church newly built and still scented with fresh-cut timber and cool morning dew. The year is around 330 AD, and something is shifting in the heart of Aksum. Gone are the days of solar discs and lunar crescents carved into the base of monuments. Today, you watch as a small procession moves through the nave, led by a young boy holding a wooden cross. Behind him, King Izana walks barefoot on woven mats, his expression serene but solemn. He is the first Christian ruler of Aksum, and perhaps all of sub-Saharan Africa. You sense it's a title he wears not with boastfulness, but with gravity. The atmosphere is not celebratory. Exactly. It's more like the feeling just before a storm breaks, or a seed takes root. Quiet, certain, deep. The ceremony is modest, almost shy. Aksum is not Rome, after all, and its new Christian traditions have been adapted to fit local rhythms. There are no grand cathedrals here, just whitewashed walls, palm branches, and open courtyards that let the wind slip in. You sit beside a stone wall, watching as hymns echo in gairs, carried by soft drums and the steady plucking of a stringed instrument. There's no organ, no bells, just voice and skin and wood. The bishop, Frumentius a foreigner, once taken captive as a boy. Now a spiritual guide raises his arms in prayer. His accent still carries traces of Tyre, but his words are fluent, grounded. Christianity came to Aksum not by force, but by quiet persistence, and it seems to suit the place. Unlike other kingdoms where faith arrives on the heels of conquest, here it has taken shape like a vine curling gently around old stone. Still, not everyone is convinced. Outside the church, at the edge of the courtyard, a small group of elders watches from a respectful distance. Their arms are crossed, their expressions thoughtful. One fingers a charm inscribed with solar markings. Old gods do not vanish overnight. nor do the beliefs of ancestors yield easily to new names. And even now, scholars continue to debate the timing. Was Ezana's conversion genuine from the start, or a political move designed to curry favour with Christian Rome and Byzantium? Was it a personal epiphany or a diplomatic necessity? There's no single answer. But the cross he chose to carve on his coins, and later his obelisk, speaks volumes in silence. You notice something unusual on the altar. Instead of a crucifix alone, there rests a carved disc with cross-like patterns, half Christian, half traditional. A local artisan's interpretation, perhaps, or maybe a deliberate blend, a nod to the idea that one does not erase the past, but folds it into the present. After the ceremony, the people gather beneath the sycamore trees. Bread is shared, honeyed and warm. You're offered a piece by an elderly woman with silver beads in her hair. She smiles and says, "The king eats this bread now. So do we. You chew slowly. It's dense but sweet, and the warmth spreads through your chest." Later, you pass through the marketplace and notice subtle changes. Vendors now greet each other with a quiet, "Peace be with you." A stonemason carves a new chapel window in the shape of a cross with rounded arms, a style now unique to Aksum. Children sketch cruciform shapes in the dust with their toes, and yet, beneath it all, the bones of the old ways still lie in wait. A priest you speak with quietly confesses that the spring outside the city, once sacred to a moon goddess, is still visited by women seeking blessings for childbirth. The cross above the spring does not erase the memory below, it reframes it. As evening falls, you walk through the city, hearing faint echoes of chant and the low hum of wind through the tall grasses. Aksum is not just becoming Christian, it is becoming its own kind of Christian, folded gently with its myths, seasons, and silence, somewhere in the hills. An older man ties a protective amulet around his grandson's wrist. On it, a faint carving of the cross, right beside the sun. Two lights, side by side. You wake to the scent of wild thyme and the damp hush of mist curling over mountain paths. Morning in the Aksumite highlands. It's cool, quiet, and endlessly green. Dew clings to the edges of broad leaves, and the air hums with bird song soft, steady, and strangely rhythmic. You're walking beside monks now, silent ones, barefoot, wrapped in pale cotton robes that sway as they climb. Their heads are bowed not from weariness but from focus. They carry little more than leather satchels, wooden staffs, and a curious sense of calm that seems to hush even the wind. Your path takes you higher, following a narrow track that twists along the edge of a steep hillside. Below, the stone outlines of farms fade into distant terraces carved like ribbons around the mountain. Up here, time feels thinner, like the air. You're not far from the sky. At last, the trail leads to a chapel, not grand or gilded, but carved directly into the rock. Its doorway is narrow, its walls etched with hand-scored crosses and symbols older than the church itself. Inside, the air is thick with frankincense, and the only light comes from narrow slits in the stone. The monks kneel. You follow. One begins to hum. It is not a song you know. The melody is long and low, looping like water through reeds. Then another joins, and another. The chapel is now a bowl of sound gentle, layered, echoing off ancient stone like the voice of the mountain itself. You breathe slowly. You feel smaller, but not in a bad way. These monks are part of Aksum's expanding spiritual world, a world that stretches not only through churches and markets, but into solitude and stone. Monastic life here is both refuge and resistance, not against society, but against its noise. Many of these monks once held titles or trades. Some simply wandered here, following visions or voices in dreams. A younger monk shows you a manuscript. It's made of goat skin, hand-stitched, the ink still slightly raised from the surface. On it, a passage in Gier's scripture. Yes, but also commentary, prayers, and marginal doodles, tiny lions, flowers, even what appears to be a loaf of bread. Faith, you learn, can be both serious and whimsical. He tells you very softly that some of these men still speak words from Hebrew texts, passed down not through synagogues, but through memory. Aksum, after all, is not far from ancient Jewish communities that once traced their lineage back to Solomon himself. The traditions here are interwoven Christian liturgy, Hebraic echoes, and indigenous rhythms. It's not a puzzle, it's a tapestry. Still, there are questions that scholars today continue to gently ask. How much of Aksum's early Christianity was shaped by Judaism? Did the Ark of the Covenant truly travel here, as later legends claim? And what of the Beta Israel Ethiopian Jews who still sing songs of Sinai in the highlands? The evidence is layered, tantalizing but often inconclusive. Outside, the sun has risen slightly. The mist burns away slowly, revealing the dramatic drop of cliffs and the rise of distant hills. The monks descend once more, their task complete for the day. But you remain for a moment longer. You touch the rock wall of the chapel, cool and solid. This isn't simply a monument, it's a witness. One that has stood in quiet prayer while centuries shifted. On your way down, you pass a small boy carrying a clay jug. He's headed upward, barefoot and determined. He nods at you without speaking, like someone who already knows where he's going. You smile, and for a second, you feel the peace he carries. Later, in the valley, you sip warm tea brewed with leaves gathered along the mountain trail. Ifama says the monks sometimes help with planting too, especially during the festivals. They bless the seeds, he whispers, but also help carry the sacks. Aksum's faith is not built only in stone. It seems, but also in steps, sweat, and silence. You stir beneath the shade of a tall sycamore tree, its branches stretching wide like an elder's embrace. The leaves rustle gently in the breeze, and nearby, the sound of a shallow stream rolls over stones worn smooth by centuries of footsteps, human and divine. You're not in a temple today, nor a church, nor a market. You're in a garden of stories. A young woman sits across from you, threading beads onto a cord. Her voice is soft, steady, and rhythmic, like a lullaby told not to lull you to sleep, but to awaken something ancient. She tells the tale of Makeda, Queen of Sheba, whose beauty shamed the moon and whose wit dazzled King Solomon himself. In this story, Makeda is no myth. She is mother to empires, the ancestral root of kings, and perhaps Aksum's most powerful memory. You listen as she spins the yarn, her eyes flicking occasionally to the hills beyond. That, she says, is where Sheba's court once stood, that well fed by the Queen's spring, that lion engraving in the rock, her royal crest. Her story, here in Aksum, isn't one of fairy tales, it's heritage. Children pass by carrying baskets of wild figs, and one pauses to add her voice to the legend. The Queen rode across the Red Sea on a crystal raft. She says seriously, and returned pregnant with Solomon's son. You nod, because in this moment you want the story to be true. And maybe, just maybe, it is. The woman smiles, adding, "His name was Menelik, and he was the first emperor of Ethiopia. He brought the Ark of the Covenant here, hidden under starlight." She says this so casually you almost don't catch it, but her tone never shifts. Myth and history here hold hands like sisters. You recall faintly that this story was written down in the Kebra Nagast, the glory of kings, a medieval text. Yes, but rooted in something older, and still, scholars today tilt their heads at its claims. Was the Queen of Sheba truly an Aksumite monarch? Was her kingdom rooted here, or in Yemen, or both? There's no hard answer, only whispers from stones. You rise and walk a little through the trees. A circle of carved rock sits half buried in the ground. Some say it was her throne, others say it was just a base for a granary, but the air around it feels different. The birds quiet here. Your skin prickles. There's a small shrine nearby, painted in ochre and black, with dried flowers laid carefully at its base. Not Christian, not quite pagan, just local, devotional. You sit before it, not to pray, but to listen. The woman approaches again, now with a small leather scroll in hand. She unrolls it to reveal a painted story Makeda's journey, her lion's son. The court of Solomon rendered in tiny brush strokes, a blend of Ethiopian and Near Eastern styles. My grandfather painted this, she says proudly. His dreams were full of her. Even today, the Queen's name is invoked during ceremonies, weddings, and lullabies. Girls are called Makeda with pride, and elders still say, "Act with the wisdom of Sheba." And yet, her historical identity remains cloaked. Was she Sabaean, a Kushite queen? A poetic fusion of many rulers and legends? No one truly knows. But in Aksum, the uncertainty doesn't dilute her power. It expands it. She becomes every queen, every matriarch, the mother behind the mountain. As the sun begins to set, you look out across the highlands. The hills glow gold, and the shadows stretch long. Somewhere, a shepherd's flute carries through the trees. The stories linger in the air like incense. You close your eyes, and you see her, not on a raft or a throne, but walking barefoot among her people, her crown set lightly on her braids, her smile quiet and full of secrets. You awaken to laughter and the distant sound of clinking cups. It's evening in the vineyards of the Aksumite highlands, where the scent of ripe grapes and baked earth mingles with wood smoke and spice. Around you, golden lanterns flicker beneath woven canopies. The celebration is gentle, like the hills themselves. No loud music or shouting, just the steady rhythm of clapping hands and shared stories under a darkening sky. You sit on a smooth stone bench beneath a fig tree. A young man offers you a small cup of Tasia honey wine infused with fragrant leaves. You take a sip. It's sweet at first, then tart with a hint of wildflower. Nearby, women in striped shawls lay baskets of roasted barley and spiced lamb on white cloths, their movements fluid, practiced. The vineyard terrace stretches out below, lined with rows of gnarled vines, their leaves fluttering gently in the evening breeze. This is not a feast of opulence, but of patience wine that has aged in clay jars buried in the cool ground, drawn only when the time is right. The harvest is in, the rains have been kind, and tonight the people of Aksum rest. Above, the stars begin to spill across the sky. sharp and unblinking. The storyteller stands, cradling a carved staff. She tells a tale half-whispered, half-sung of how grapes came to Aksum, smuggled by traders who disguised vines as walking sticks. The children giggle, though a few of the elders nod with mock seriousness, as if the story might just be true. And then, slowly, her voice shifts, the tone changes. She speaks of a fire a fury that once swept across the kingdom. Gudit, she says, a name that echoes like a drum beat, a queen of wrath, vengeance, or perhaps rebellion. The details are soft-edged and smoky, like the night air. Some say Gudit was an outsider, a warrior queen who razed churches and burned down Aksumite towns in the 10th century. Others say she was born of royal blood, betrayed and furious. Was she Jewish pagan? A Christian rebel? No one agrees. Her motives, like her memory, are fractured, but her destruction is whispered as fact. One old man taps his pipe and mutters, "Even stone weeps if it remembers her name." You don't know if he's being poetic or literal. You rise and wander the edges of the vineyard, past the light of the fire. The land changes. There are broken stones scattered near the field's end, half swallowed by grass. A few are carved faint traces of crosses, perhaps. Others are blackened, as if singed by time itself. Here and there, a shard of pottery glints under moonlight. You kneel to touch one of the stones. It's still warm, not from flame, but from the long memory of the earth. Historians today remain uncertain about Gudit. Was she real, a mythologized memory of political collapse, a person, or a movement? The stories vary wildly, depending on who you ask. In some versions, she rules for 40 years. In others, she dies young but leaves smoke in her wake. What is agreed upon is this: around the 10th century, Aksum's visible power wanes, and Gudit's name is forever tied to that dimming. But in this moment, there is no fear, only memory. You return to the circle of light. The storyteller has shifted to gentler tales now: lions who play chess, farmers who plant songs in their fields. The fire crackles, the wine is poured again. A young girl leans against your side, her eyes wide. "Do you think she was real?" she asks. You pause. "She was something," you say softly. And sometimes, something is enough. The stars blink slowly, as if nodding. You wake beneath the canvas of a large tent, its edges fluttering gently in the early morning breeze. The air smells of leather, sweat, and something musky familiar, but immense. When you step outside, you realize why elephants, a line of them thick-legged and sure-footed, stands in formation, their sides painted with swirls of red ochre, their tusks polished to a gleam. Each wears a harness of thick rope and wood, draped with embroidered cloth dyed in deep indigos and faded crimsons. Soldiers and handlers move around them, checking packs, murmuring instructions, and feeding them branches of soft acacia. You are witnessing the march of Aksumite war elephants preparing to cross the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. The sea route to Arabia lies ahead, narrow but treacherous. But for now, the army moves inland toward the coast, toward ships waiting at Adulis. You ride alongside them on a mule, feeling the earth tremble with each elephant step. Your destination, Himyar, the kingdom across the water in the south of Arabia. Aksum has long traded with Himyar, but now the two powers teeter between friendship and confrontation. Religion has begun to matter more. Aksum, now Christian, Himyar with its growing Jewish elite, but the real fuel behind tension: control of the incense trade. Frankincense, myrrh, cinnamon, These pass through Hymya's hands, and Aksum does not forget it. At a midday halt, a commander offers you a seat by a stream. He tells you, over dried figs and cool water, that King Caleb is determined to protect Christian communities in Hymya. Whether that's his only motive, no one says, but the troops move with purpose, and the elephants are part of the message Aksum comes in peace or in strength. You listen as the men tell tales. One claims a single elephant once scattered an entire Himyarite cavalry by simply sneezing. Another insists the elephants can understand 5 languages and respond to drums like they're hearing orders from the king himself. It may sound like boasting, but the animals are impressive. One elephant lifts a fallen log delicately with its trunk and places it beside the path, as if tidying. Another nudges a young boy out of harm's way with a softness you wouldn't expect from something so large. You notice the religious icons pinned to each soldier's sash, small crosses, bits of scripture written on vellum, tucked into leather cases. The spiritual and the military walk together here. Every step is both political and devotional. Historians debate how far these campaigns truly reached. Did the Aksumist elephants actually cross the sea? Were they loaded onto ships or sent overland through a longer route? Records are sparse. Inscriptions from King Caleb suggest triumph, but the physical trail grows faint once across the strait. Did they conquer Sena or simply influence the throne? The answers drift like sea mist, but in your present, the campaign is real, the preparations are precise, and the mood is one of tension, tempered by duty. By evening, the army reaches the coast. The sea glimmers in the waning light, and boats long, low, and wide are tied to the docks. Ramps are lowered. The elephants hesitate, just slightly. Then the lead one steps aboard, slow and certain. You sit at the edge of the harbour, feet dangling over the water, as the stars appear, dim at first, then bold and certain. The army settles down behind you. Low singing begins, not of war, but of protection, endurance, and memory. The wind carries the scent of frankincense from a nearby brazier. The ocean murmurs softly, and somewhere out there in the dark, Arabia waits. The morning comes quietly, but the city you enter next is anything but still. You're in Zafar, deep within the Himyarite kingdom. The stone streets hum with the shuffle of sandals and the soft clatter of clay jars against market stalls. Sana'a lies to the north, but here, too, Aksumite presence is visible, felt in the traders' embroidered robes, the accents slipping between Ge'ez and Sabaean, and the coins marked with crosses that pass from palm to palm. You wander past an open-air cafe shaded by fig trees. 2 men argue not with heat, but with elaborate courtesy over whether King Caleb of Aksum intervened too forcefully in Himyar's politics, or whether it was necessary to protect Christians in the region. Their voices dance between theology and economics, as if debating the price of both salvation and saffron. Nearby, a scribe crouches over a stone inscription being carved in South Arabian script. You pause to watch. The letters are crisp, angular, deliberate. When he finishes, he nods toward it and says softly, "Names fade slower in stone." You nod, wondering what stories lie beneath each one. You pass a row of villas, each built in a distinct blend of architectural traditions, tall stone towers with wooden lattice balconies, fragrant herb gardens shaded by woven canopies. Some bear religious markings, menorahs, crosses, and ancient symbols whose meanings are now lost to time. This is not a land of clean divisions, you realize. It's a place where trade and belief have knotted together into something complex, tense, and deeply human. King Caleb's intervention in Himyar around the early 6th century was indeed real. Inscriptions from both sides mention it. Some say he launched a full-scale invasion after learning of the massacre of Christians under the Jewish king Dunuaz. Others claim he was invited in by a Himyarite faction seeking support. The truth? Possibly both. Possibly neither. You sit near the well where merchants draw water for their camels. One of them, a woman with a long veil and sun-darkened hands, tells you a story passed from her grandmother that when the Aksumites arrived, they were greeted with roses and arrows in equal measure. Peace, then betrayal, then peace again. Some say Caleb sent an Ethiopian general named Abrahah to govern Himyar after the campaign. Others say Abrahah rebelled and ruled independently, even launching his own expeditions northward. You notice the name scratched into a broken column in a ruined courtyard. Abrahah, faded, but there. And yet, this Himyarite city doesn't feel conquered. It feels entangled. You walk further into the city centre, where a marketplace buzzes under coloured awnings. Sellers call out in half a dozen tongues: Greek, Aramaic, Ge'ez, and Arabic among them. The smell of cardamom and burning resin hangs in the air. A boy offers you a slice of flatbread with honey too sweet, but comforting. You spot a group of children playing a game with carved stones. One of them has drawn a lion in the dust. Another has sketched an elephant beside it. You smile. The stories travel faster than armies. And what of the religion here? Was Himyar truly Jewish by this time, or simply influenced by Jewish merchants and scribes? Modern scholars still debate it. Inscriptions show a variety of religious identities. The truth may lie not in labels but in daily rhythms, how one lights a fire, or greets a guest, or buries the dead. Faith, like trade, flows between fingers and across borders. By evening, you sit by a rooftop brazier, watching smoke curl into the sky. Somewhere below, a stringed instrument plays a wandering melody. You sip water steeped with mint and lemon, savouring the cool contrast against the warm air. You think of the elephants now resting by the coast, of Caleb back in Aksum, reading letters brought by ship, of Abrahah, perhaps still dreaming of his own ambitions, of scribes and children and stone carvers whose names may never enter official history, yet remain. Zafar sleeps fitfully, caught between empires. You, however, close your eyes easily. You rise with the sea wind, brushing the sand from your cloak as the dawn light spills across the abandoned port of Adulis. It's quieter now, quieter than you remember. The harbour, once teeming with sails and shouts, now rests beneath layers of dust and silence. Cracked amphorae lie half buried in the earth. A weathered mast leans against the broken wall of a warehouse, its ropes frayed and tangled with salt grass. You walk slowly along the stone quay, where carved steps descend into shallow water. No ship waits here. No traders argue over the price of cinnamon or silk. Even the gulls seem hesitant to call. Adulis was once Aksum's lifeline, a jewel of the Red Sea trade. Spices from India, wine from Syria, iron from Africa's interior, all once passed through this port. Roman geographers knew its name. Byzantine clerics praised its piety, and Aksumite kings guarded it like the heart of an empire. But now you run your fingers along a scorched wall. The basalt is warm to the touch, as if it remembers. Charm marks still stain the stone where a warehouse once stood. No one agrees on what happened. Was it a slow decline or a sudden disaster? Some say the sea receded. Others whisper of a raid, perhaps by Himyarites, or even Byzantine rivals. And there are stranger theories too. Earthquakes, disease, or climate shift that turned thriving valleys into dust. You find a broken inscription half sunk into the shore. The letters are Greek, faint but legible, offering a dedication to a long-forgotten deity. You trace them slowly, a prayer meant to last forever, now read only by you. Around a corner, you spot a rusted scale still hanging from a merchant's stall. Beneath it, shells and pebbles have gathered where coins once changed hands. You crouch and notice something glinting, an Aksumite coin, dulled by salt but unmistakable. You lift it, wipe it gently, and see the faint cross of King Azana still pressed into the gold. A group of goats wanders nearby, their bells clinking softly. A shepherd nods at you from a distance. Nobody buys much anymore, he says in Gares, but they come to look. You nod in return. Further inland, the remnants of paved roads stretch out, cracked and overgrown. Once, they carried caravans all the way to the highlands' ivory, incense, and information flowing like blood through veins. But now, the arteries feel stiff, still there, but dormant. A pair of young boys chase each other through the ruins. One shouts that he found an old coin stash, just 5 copper pieces buried in the roots of a fig tree. Proof the Romans came back, he insists. The other laughs and says they were probably dropped last week. And maybe they were, but the spirit of Adulis lives in both versions. You pause near the church ruins. The walls are crumbling, but a mosaic still clings to the apse simple, geometric, faint traces of red and blue glass arranged like stars. The roof is long gone, open now to the pale morning sky. And yet, for all its stillness, Adulis is not truly dead, only sleeping. Scholars still debate the precise reasons for its decline. Was it geopolitical isolation, as Arab-Islamic trade routes bypassed the Red Sea for new overland options? Or perhaps environmental rising silt, retreating water, drought in the highlands? Each theory has its champions. None are complete. You sit on a broken column and close your eyes. The past overlays the present like a fading fresco. You hear the echo of traders calling out prices, priests blessing vessels before departure, children laughing as they load baskets of grain. All of it still here, just quieter. A small breeze picks up and carries the smell of salt, distant firewood, and old memory, and so Adulis waits. Not for ships, but for remembrance. You awaken to the creaking rhythm of a ship on open water. The sail above you billows gently, dyed a pale rust colour and patched at the corners. You sit beneath its shadow, watching sunlight play across the rolling waves of the Red Sea. To your right, a navigator crouches beside a wooden chartboard, studying the position of the sun with a polished brass disc. He murmurs to himself, marking time, marking direction. You're aboard a merchant vessel sailing from Adulis into the open sea, bound for southern India, or perhaps not. The monsoon winds are unpredictable this year. That's what the captain said. Anyway. He'd frowned at the sky earlier this morning, clouds forming oddly in the east, and rubbed his beard in a way that didn't exactly reassure. Below deck, amphorae clink together with each rise of the hull filled with ivory, dried fish, iron tools, maybe even some of the last bundles of frankincense from Aksumite groves. You pass a crewman who's retching quietly into the sea. He waves a hand, embarrassed. Not used to sailing west this early, he mumbles. You lean over the edge and peer into the blue. Somewhere below, a coral reef shimmers and fish flash like living coins. Trade with India has long been a cornerstone of Aksum's power. Cinnamon, silk, pepper, pearls, all of these crossed back and forth along the maritime Silk Road. But something has changed now. Something uneasy rides the breeze. The ship rolls slightly as the wind shifts. You glance up, so does the navigator. His brow furrows. Inland, rivers are said to be running thinner. Forests don't bloom quite as richly. And back in Aksum, the rainfall patterns are changing just slightly, just enough. The farmers whisper of tired soil. The priests speak of balance disturbed. Here on the sea, the currents seem to echo those patterns. One sailor points out a dark shape on the horizon. A storm or just heat, someone asks. The captain doesn't answer. You gather near a cooking fire, a pot of lentils swaying with the ship's movement, and sit with a merchant who's traded this route for decades. I remember when 10 ships would leave Adulis every spring, he says. Now 3, maybe 4. And the winds. They play tricks now. You ask what changed. He shrugs, eyes narrowed. The world got warmer, or maybe colder. Maybe the gods turned their heads for a while. Then he says something curious. Maybe we ask too much of the sea. Historians today still debate the nature of Aksum's decline in the 7th and 8th centuries. Was it environmental, economic, or both? Did changing monsoon patterns make the Red Sea routes less reliable? Did Aksum overextend itself, failing to adapt to a shifting global trade network increasingly dominated by Islamic ports farther north? There's no single answer. Only the rhythm of waves and guesses traced in salt. Later, you're roused from a nap by a sudden hush. The storm passed you by. It seems just heat and cloud. You breathe easier. The crew laughs a little, tension releasing. Someone plays a flute. The sky clears, and in that clear sky, you see something strange, birds flying high, too far from land for comfort. You ask the captain about them. They always know where to go, he says. Unlike us, night falls and stars emerge. The crew prays before sleep, some to Christ, some to old sea gods, some to no name at all. Faith, like the wind, is invisible but felt. You lie on a woven mat, rocking gently with the ship, watching constellations drift overhead. Somewhere ahead lies India, or perhaps a coastal way station, if the winds shift again. And behind you, Aksum, Adulis, and all that once was. The waves murmur like an old lullaby, ancient and indecipherable. You close your eyes to their song. You open your eyes to the soft scrape of reed pens across parchment. You're in a dimly lit room, its stone walls lined with scrolls, wax tablets, and carefully stacked codices. A breeze slips in through a high window, carrying with it the dry scent of ink and candle smoke. You're in the scriptoria of Aksum, sometime in the mid-6th century. The air is hushed, not out of reverence, but concentration. Here, in this highland sanctuary, scribes bend over desks, copying letters, scriptures, and royal decrees in quiet rhythm, each word etched in gaze, the language of state and scripture, the letters curling like vines. One monk adjusts the angle of a shard of polished obsidian to better reflect the daylight onto his parchment, a subtle trick clever and entirely local. You sit beside a bearded scribe in a red wool robe. His fingers are ink-stained, his breath steady. He's working on a letter to Justinian, Emperor of Byzantium. Yes, that Justinian. the one whose mosaics still shimmer in Hagia Sophia, who codified Roman law and dreamed of a reunited empire. What's in this letter? A request for support? Perhaps. A report on trade or faith? Or maybe a polite rebuke about delays in supplies promised by treaty? You're not told the exact contents, but you can feel the weight of the correspondence. It's diplomatic parchment, not just poetry. Aksum and Byzantium, two Christian empires at either end of the known world. One anchored in Constantinople's golden domes, the other here in the cool silence of the Ethiopian highlands. They are distant cousins of faith, trading letters, ambassadors, and occasional worries. The scribe pauses and offers you a bit of honeyed bread, slightly dry but comforting. He tells you, half amused, that the reply from Constantinople took so long to arrive that by the time it reached Aksum, the bishop it was addressed to had passed away. He would have liked the compliment, the scribe says with a smile. You glance around and see scrolls tied with coloured cords, each colour signalling a different sender. Blue for Himyar, red for Byzantine letters, and gold-twined for royal decrees from Caleb himself, each tied and stacked with gentle care. On the far side of the room, a younger scribe copies portions of a Greek gospel into Ge'ez, translating slowly, uncertain of a few idioms. A mentor leans over, correcting with a patient finger. That word, he says, means mercy, but don't forget. Mercy here isn't soft, it's strong. Outside, a pair of messengers prepare their mules. One carries a leather pouch sealed with wax. Another double-checks the saddle straps, murmuring a prayer before the long ride north. This one goes to the Coptic patriarch. A monk explains. We're asking about a calendar discrepancy. Again, even today, historians puzzle over the true extent of Aksum's diplomatic reach. We have surviving letters, mentions in foreign chronicles, even signs that Aksumite envoys travel to Jerusalem, or how often, how far the answers come in pieces. What's certain is this Aksum knew how to speak the world's language, whether through coins, carved inscriptions, or parchment bound for foreign thrones. As you linger near the door, the scribe gestures to a stack of unused parchment. The blank pages, he says, are the loudest. They're waiting to become history. You step outside into the sunlight, blinking against the brightness. A bell tolls in the distance, calling monks to midday prayer. Birds spiral above the rooftops, and the breeze carries faint words you cannot quite hear, but they're still being written somewhere by someone, and that's enough. You awaken to the soft clinking of bells, small ones, delicate and melodic, hanging from the harnesses of a caravan of camels. Their long legs move in slow procession through a winding path across the Aksumite highlands, each beast trailing another like beads on a string. Their eyes are half closed, their jaws chewing steadily, rhythmically, as if lulled by the landscape itself. You're walking beside them now, your feet brushing the same paths once trod by oxen, carts and royal messengers. But this scene is different from the ones you've seen before. There are fewer Aksumite banners flying above the hills. The roads feel dustier, and the camels. They weren't always the lords of this route. Centuries ago, it was oxen that carried Aksum's goods, broad-shouldered beasts, sturdy and slow, perfect for the fertile central highlands. But now, the rhythms of trade are changing. The camel desert-born, drought-proof, and tirelessly efficient has become the new master of the route. You pass a group of traders gathered around a low fire. They're breaking fast with flatbread and a thick porridge of lentils. One dips a strip of bread into a bowl and gestures for you to join them. "We came from Zayla," he says. "Took the coast, then cut inland." Another trader chimes in, grinning. "It used to take us 2 weeks with oxen. Now 1 week, and fewer complaints." A camel snorts as if agreeing. "They carry more than goods. These men speak multiple tongues, Arabic, Ge'ez, afar, sometimes a trace of Persian. They carry stories and news, some reliable, some stretched thinner than the hides on their drums. You notice something curious in the goods they're packing, not Aksumite coin, but silver dirhams stamped with Arabic script. And books, yes, books wrapped in leather, written in Arabic and containing surahs from the Quran. These caravans are not only bringing trade, they're bringing Islam." A young boy holds up a copy of a worn prayer text as whispers it aloud to himself. You ask his father if they're from Arabia. "No," he replies, "from here." But as world moves, so must we. You look around. The villages along the trail now have mixed markers, crosses etched on doorways. Yes, but also crescent moon carvings tucked discreetly into wooden beams. The world, it seems, is tilting gently toward a new rhythm. The traders still stop at the old shrines. Some sprinkle water, others bow, but the prayers are changing. The gods being thanked are different, and still the road continues. Historians often debate the timeline. When did Islamic trade routes begin to truly bypass Aksum? Was it after the rise of Mecca as a dominant religious and economic force? Or was it simply that the inland roads of Arabia proved more reliable than the sea lanes subject to storms and silted rivers? The answer, again, is complicated. Trade doesn't vanish, it shifts. Like the monsoon winds, it follows new paths. By midday, you reach a small market town nestled in a valley. It's older than it looks, built atop layers of stone foundations, once part of Aksum's inner arteries. Now, it thrives quietly under camel bells and murmured prayers. A woman sells you a piece of dried mango wrapped in palm leaf, sweet and chewy. She points to a small shrine nearby and says, "My mother prayed there when she married. My daughter wears a hijab now. Same road, same sky." You nod. As evening falls, the caravan continues its slow path toward the coast. The camels move without complaint, as they always do, and you follow, watching their shadows stretch long across the dirt track. In the distance, you see an old Aksumite mile marker, chipped, weathered, but still standing. Beside it, someone has tied a scrap of cloth, a prayer, maybe to Christ, maybe to Allah, maybe to both. You open your eyes to the sight of a towering monolith, its surface chiseled smooth, its face lined with faint patterns of windows and doors. But unlike the proud stelae of Aksum you saw before, this one does not stand tall. It lies on its side, fractured but magnificent, its massive length sprawled across the dusty grass like a sleeping titan. This is the obelisk of Aksum, once believed to be the tallest of its kind, nearly 80 feet of perfectly cut granite, carved with mimicries of multi-storied palaces. Today, it rests not from age alone, but from displacement. A pair of goats grazes near its base, completely indifferent to its grandeur. Children climb carefully over its lower ridges, laughing, their sandals clicking softly on stone once sacred. A local guide stands nearby, telling the tale for the 1,000th time. It fell, or perhaps it was pushed, or perhaps taken. You listen quietly. The truth is more complex, as it often is with old stone. In the 1930s, during the era of Mussolini's occupation of Ethiopia, Italian engineers disassembled the fallen obelisk and shipped it in pieces to Rome. There it stood, reassembled near a busy intersection far from the highland skies that once crowned it. Decades passed. Scholars, activists, and elders petitioned for its return. And finally, in 2005, it came home piece by piece, like a puzzle finally remembering where it belonged. The return was careful, technical, and deeply symbolic. Even now, engineers from multiple nations study how to anchor the stele once again, safely, to its ancestral earth. You run your fingers along the lines carved into its granite. Each false window, each stylized door, reflects Aksum's architectural language and empire carved not just in buildings but in metaphor. These weren't mere gravestones. They were monuments of permanence, and yet this stele defied permanence in a different way. Not because it eroded, but because it travelled, because it was missed and then returned. A nearby boy points to a hairline crack and says, "They say it shook during the storm last year. Not much, just enough to let us know it was awake." You smile. Whether it did or not doesn't matter. What matters is the way the past still speaks, subtly, sturdily. There's debate, of course, about who the obelisk originally honoured, a king, a priest, perhaps a noblewoman with estates vast enough to merit a monument taller than most buildings today. No inscription tells us, only silence and shadow. You sit on the soft slope of a nearby hill, overlooking the entire field of stelae. Some still stand, others lean, their bases sinking into the soil like tired giants. And then there's this one still grand, even reclining, a story half told. A local mason joins you, sharpening a chisel while watching his apprentice mix mortar for a church wall nearby. He nods toward the obelisk. "It's strange, isn't it?" he says. "We build to last, but nothing listens longer than stone." You ask if he believes the stele will be raised again. He shrugs. Perhaps, but even lying down, it teaches. You stay until the sun begins to dip behind the hills, casting long shadows across the carved ridges of the fallen giant. The patterns glow golden in the light, simple, geometric, timeless. You close your eyes beside it, hand resting against its edge. Even stillness can be a kind of power. You awaken to the faint sound of chisels tapping against stone. It's not the steady rhythm of grand construction, but something quieter, more practical. You sit beneath a fig tree overlooking the edge of a quiet village, where men and women are carefully repurposing blocks of carved basalt and granite. Stones that once held royal names and sacred images are being fit into new walls for homes, for storehouses, even for modest places of worship. This is Aksum in transition, a city not forgotten but transformed. The gleaming capital of kings has softened, faded slightly at the edges, but life, quiet and persistent, goes on. You rise and wander down the slope toward the work site. A half-built wall frames your path, its base formed from the fragments of an old stele still etched with symbols, now sitting comfortably beside clay bricks and timber supports. A boy walks past carrying a jug on his shoulder, barely noticing the ancient design under his feet. You pause at the entrance of a small church. Its wooden door is propped open, and inside, candlelight flickers against painted icons. The base of the altar is made from a reused Aksumite column worn smooth, but still bearing the faint outline of a solar disk. Long out of fashion but never erased. A priest greets you, inviting you to sit on a carved stone bench. It was once part of a palace stair, he explains with a smile. Now it holds tired people instead of royalty. I think that's better. The reuse of stone called spolia by historians was not unique to Aksum, but here it carry a particular quiet grace. A kingdom that once reached across seas and sent elephants into Arabia now finds dignity in recycled grandeur. There's no bitterness in it, only a sense of rhythm, of history folding in on itself. Still, the scholars wonder, does this repurposing mark decline or resilience? Were the Aksumites merely scavenging the bones of a greater past, or were they consciously layering history into daily life? Was this economy or devotion, pragmatism or memory? The stones do not answer. You step around the side of the church and find a garden blooming against a low retaining wall built from stone that once lined a royal tomb. Carved into one block is a faint inscription, almost illegible. You trace it lightly. It once spoke a king's name, now softened by sun and rain and time, and yet, somehow, that makes it feel more alive. Children run by, laughing, one wearing a wooden cross around his neck and another twirling a stick like a sword. They shout names you don't recognize, heroes of local tales, perhaps, or saints you've never heard of. Even as languages change and memories shift, play continues. A woman nearby is laying stones for a new home. You offer to help. She hands you a rough square block, heavier than expected. As you place it gently into the wall, she says, "This one came from the old baths. My grandfather told me." You nod. It fits perfectly. By evening, you're invited to a modest meal injera with lentils and spicy greens, eaten by lamplight on a low terrace. The stone benches beneath you carry the ghosts of palace thresholds, now softened by quilts and conversation. Over dinner, an elder tells a joke about an Aksumite king who got lost in his own palace because it had too many doors. Everyone laughs, even if no one knows if it's true, and that, perhaps, is the point. You linger long after the dishes are cleared, listening to the night sounds, goats in the distance, a baby crying softly, someone singing to calm her. Above you, the stars blink with slow assurance. They have seen Aksum rise and shift and sleep, and beneath your feet, the stones remember everything. You awaken in a dusty room lit only by a sliver of light slipping through a small lattice window. The air smells of dry parchment, beeswax, and the faint musk of old leather. Around you, shelves sag under the weight of scrolls, crumbling codices, and clay tablets whose edges have begun to chip and flake. This is not a palace, nor a church, nor a bustling market. It's a room tucked deep within an aging monastery somewhere in the Aksumisi highlands, forgotten by most, but still guarded like a treasure chest whose lock no longer quite fits. An old monk sits nearby, his back curved like a question mark. He gestures for you to sit beside him. His fingers move with the muscle memory of decades, gently rolling open a parchment that reveals rows of Ge'ez text, each line pressed carefully between thin red guidelines. The writing is faint but confident, curling upward in places, as if reaching for something long since past. He clears his throat, then begins to read aloud. You don't catch every word, but names flicker to life. Kings you've heard of, places you've stood, and a few names that you don't recognize at all. Wazina, he says softly, pointing. Or maybe Waziba. Depends on who you ask. He chuckles. That's the thing. By the time you reach the final centuries of Aksum, perhaps the 8th or 10th, the certainty begins to fade, not because the kingdom has vanished, but because its story grows quiet, scattered, even secretive. One name appears in one record, then vanishes for generations. A coin bears the title of a king never mentioned in any inscription. A church built in the highlands is said to be royal, but no records say who funded it. You walk through the next room, a storage space with old metal seals, frayed documents, and relics of uncertain age. Some are labelled carefully. Others bear only question marks. Their origin a matter of guesswork and hopeful hunches. Historians still debate whether there was truly a final king of Aksum. Some point to a ruler named Dil-Naod, possibly the last to reign before the rise of the Zagwe dynasty. Others suggest that Aksum simply faded, its power absorbed by smaller regional lords, its name replaced by newer titles. Was it a sudden end, a political collapse, or just a gentle erasure, like fog retreating from the hills? The monk shows you a page from the Synaxarium, a liturgical calendar. It lists saints and feast days, but tucked between entries is something odd, a royal name, not found elsewhere. Was he a forgotten king, a fictional insertion, or simply a mistake by a sleepy scribe? You walk outside into the monastery courtyard. It's quiet, save for the hum of bees around the herb garden and the distant call of a goat. The walls around you are built from repurposed palace stones. Even now, the past rests beneath every step. There's a well in the centre, ringed with moss. A young novice draws water and offers you a cup. It tastes cold and ancient, as if drawn from beneath a library. The elder monk follows you to the gate. People think Aksum is gone, he says gently, but we still speak its words, still pray in its tongue. And when we light our lamps for feast days, we do it as they did without needing to say why. You nod, understanding now that history does not always vanish with a roar. Sometimes it curls inward, like a cat finding the warmest stone. That night, you lie on a narrow cot inside the scriptorium. Through the window, the stars are sharp, so many, so close you feel you might reach out and catch one. You wonder what else was lost, what names, what dreams, and you wonder what might still be found. You awaken just as the fog lifts from the terraced hills of the northern highlands. The morning is crisp, the light filtered through thin clouds drifting over rows of stone-lined fields that cascade down the mountainside like green steps in a giant's garden. A shepherd's flute echoes faintly in the distance, high and plaintive, the kind of sound that's more felt than heard. You walk slowly along a narrow footpath, your fingers brushing against thyme and wild basil that grow in soft clusters by the rocks. The air here smells like memory clean, wet soil, and the warmth of stones slowly heating under the rising sun. This place is far from Aksum's capital, but its bones are familiar. You pause before a crumbled foundation of carved basalt, only now visible because the hillside above it has recently been cleared for farming. The base of a column juts upward at a slant, half swallowed by roots. Someone at some point built something important here. A group of villagers gathers nearby, watching as a team of archaeologists works carefully with brushes and trowels. One of them waves you over. They think it's part of a royal structure, he says softly, but we always thought it was just a place for goats. You kneel beside the trench. There, etched faintly into one of the stones, is a symbol, a cross, perhaps, or a stylized sun. It's hard to say. Even the archaeologists shrug. The markings are worn, ambiguous. It could be Christian, or older. You help pass a bucket of soil up the slope and hear one of the researchers speaking in careful gezes. They're looking for confirmation, a local elder says beside you, but we already know. You glance at him, know that this place mattered. You spend the afternoon walking with the elder through the village. He points out old stones built into walls, thresholds, even wells. This one, he says, tapping a door frame, used to stand in the palace. My great-grandfather told me. Whether it's true or not doesn't matter much. What matters is the telling. Back in the valley, the archaeological team debates among themselves. Some argue it was a noble's estate. Others suggest a minor royal residence. A few think it may be evidence of a provincial church built during the waning years of Aksum's influence. Its architectural style a blend of old and new. Still, the debate lingers. Was Aksum's power truly centered in its capital alone, or did it extend, like underground streams, into dozens of quiet hilltop sites, places with no stelae, no coins, but deep, enduring roots? One historian mentions that the majority of Aksum's landscape remains unexcavated. The vast highlands conceal unknown layers of human movement, worship, and work. Some sites show signs of continuity well past the supposed end of the kingdom in the 10th century. Farming terraces still in use today might sit atop temples, royal courts, or schools of scripture. As dusk settles, you sit beneath a lone acacia tree with a view of the entire valley. Smoke rises from clay chimneys. Bells ring faintly from the goats being led home. And near the field, a group of children plays in the dirt with stones that were once capitals or cornices. One child waves you over to show her discovery a carved face, half buried in the earth. The nose is chipped, the features weathered, but the eyes still gaze outward, quiet, alert, enduring. She was a queen, the girl says. She watched the land grow. You don't correct her. As the stars blink to life, you realize not every throne was made of gold. Some were built of patience, of land, of lineage whispered rather than recorded. And here in the highlands, the silence still tells stories. You awaken in the half-light of dawn, wrapped in the cool shadow of a towering chapel. Its outer walls are plain, no grandeur. No gold, but built with quiet intent from ash-coloured stone. The grass is wet beneath your feet, and dew clings to the low walls surrounding the structure like a silver veil. You are in modern Aksum, but what lies before you is ancient, layered with centuries of prayer and mystery. Before you stands the chapel of the tablet small, solemn, and surrounded by an iron fence. Its windows are few and narrow. Its doors are closed, always closed. Inside, it is said, lies the Ark of the Covenant. Yes, that Ark, the one carried by the Israelites in the wilderness, the one that held the tablets of the 10 Commandments, the one lost to history, or so the world believes. But here in Aksum, the legend is very much alive. A lone monk guards the chapel. He does not leave. He does not speak to outsiders. He is said to be the only living soul permitted to see the ark, if it is indeed inside. You do not see him, but you feel his presence, steady and unyielding. Behind the small window slit where a flicker of candlelight burns, a priest stands beside you, watching. As pilgrims begin to gather, some local, others from distant corners of Ethiopia, some kneeling, some silent. One woman sings a soft hymn, barely more than a whisper, carried away by the morning breeze. The priest speaks quietly, The ark came here with Menelik, the son of Solomon and Sheba. He says it with no trace of doubt, as though stating a simple fact, like the name of a river or the turning of the seasons. The tradition is powerful. The Kebra Nagast tells of Menelik's journey to Jerusalem, his return to Aksum, and the secret transfer of the ark taken not by theft, but by divine permission. Since then, it has been guarded here, in silence. You ask, gently, if anyone else has seen it. He smiles, patient. Many have asked, but only the guardian knows. Historians, of course, remain divided. Some believe the ark never left Israel. Others suggest the Ethiopian tradition may stem from a later symbolic claim, one meant to elevate the spiritual authority of the Aksumite church. A few entertain the possibility that a sacred object, if not the ark, was indeed brought here, forming the root of centuries of belief. But here, beside the chapel, none of that matters. What matters is the stillness, the faith, the presence of something just out of reach, but never out of heart. You walk around the perimeter. No one enters. No one even touches the gate. And yet, countless hands have passed along this fence praying, hoping, thanking. The rusted iron glows faintly in the golden sunrise. A group of young men approaches with baskets of flowers and incense. They kneel and press their foreheads to the stone. One murmurs a prayer for his father's recovery. Another simply cries. You feel no pressure to believe, only an invitation to witness. A small museum nearby displays replicas, ritual objects, paintings, illuminated manuscripts. You pass through slowly, examining the cross-shaped crowns of old emperors, robes stitched with lions, and scrolls written in gears on yellowed parchment. The line between story and truth blurs here, but it blurs softly, not deceptively, like fog rather than smoke. You return once more to the chapel. The candlelight is still burning. The priest offers a final thought. Even if the ark was never here, he says, what has it given us? Pilgrimage, purpose, hope. That is no small gift. As the sun rises higher, casting long shadows over the courtyard, the crowd begins to thin, but the chapel remains, unchanged, still locked, still watched, still believed. You awaken beneath a sky so vast it feels like a story waiting to be told. The stars are just beginning to fade, washed gently by the soft pink of early morning. You lie on a bed of woven reeds, nestled beneath a stone terrace in the heart of Aksum, modern, yet ancient, familiar, yet dreamlike. Around you, life stirs slowly. A rooster calls, somewhere nearby. A child hums a hymn you heard once in a mountaintop chapel. You rise and stretch, your bones remembering the journey of centuries you've walked in quiet wonder. The city breathes calmly now, not the Aksum of kings and coins, of incense caravans or thundering war elephants, but a living, breathing place where memory runs like a thread through every street and prayer, stitched into daily life with quiet reverence. You wander the old paths once more. There's a coffee ceremony beginning near a garden courtyard, the scent of roasted beans mingling with the earthy perfume of rain-dampened stone. The host greets you with a nod. You sit, you sip. The rhythm of the past continues now through hospitality, not conquest. Children walk by in school uniforms, giggling, balancing books on their heads. Their footsteps echo softly off the basalt flagstones that have felt royal sandals, camel hooves, and now playful sneakers. Time doesn't erase, it layers. In the central square, you stop before a plaque bearing the name of the obelisk that once stood tall, then fell, then returned. There's a small flower growing at its base, undisturbed. A woman nearby dusts the steps. My grandmother said the stone sings in the wind. She tells you. You tilt your head and listen. And maybe, just maybe, you hear it too, nearby. A modest church bell rings. Inside, the walls are new, the songs old. The choir sings in gares, voices rising like incense toward painted ceilings. Aksum's faith has changed, and yet it has not. It holds its roots with both hands tight, but gently. And you've walked among the memories of kings named Azana, Caleb, and Dil Naod. You felt the cool shadow of fallen stelae, the flicker of candles lit for unseen relics. You've shared wine, whispers, and wonder. You stand now at the edge of the city, watching the land stretch outward into golden hills. There's a moment where everything holds still like breath before a song. Because the story of Aksum doesn't end. It fades, glows, and echoes beneath starlight. It is there in the pulse of the highlands, in the curve of a coin's worn edge, in the language whispered at twilight. It is memory enduring not because it demands to be remembered, but because it never truly left. And now, my dear sleepy traveller, it's time to rest. Let your breath slow. Let your eyelids grow heavier with each word. You have walked through the great halls of stone and silence, stood among the carved monuments of Aksum, sipped honey wine beneath starlit terraces, and heard the hum of prayers passed down through centuries. You've wandered the highlands where mist kisses chapel walls. You've listened to elephants stepping through the dust, and camels whispering their way across the trade routes of ancient seas. You've tasted the quiet power of a kingdom whose name once rippled from Rome to India and still drifts gently on the wind. You've seen greatness not in noise but in stillness. Now, let all that settle in your chest like warm incense. Let your mind soften like the worn faces of old coins. Let the weight of time cradle you not heavy, but steady, protective. In this moment, there is no need to remember everything. Just know that the echoes of Aksum linger in the mountains and the wind, in stories told at dusk and prayers murmured at dawn. And that tonight, those echoes have found you. So let go now. Let the history drift into dreams. Let your breathing match the ancient rhythm of oxen carts, of waves against Adulis, of monks turning pages in the candlelight. You are safe. You are still. You are home, in the hush of a story that has travelled long to meet you. Sweet dreams.